We are recording. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of No Driving Gloves. I am Sean, and joining us today is a very special guest. Ben Keating is on the program with us, and you can see behind me here, you can see one of the gorgeous Viper Exchange Vipers that Ben brought to racetracks along with all of the folks that were involved in the Viper Exchange program. Had Bill Riley on the show a week or two ago and picked Bill's brain about what happens, what went on during the Viper program. I picked his brain, we picked his brain regarding the differences between the Viper and the Mercedes and the Ford GT and all that stuff. And we could get into a little bit of that with you, Ben, but I know that, things have kind of moved on from the Viper as far as the Viper on the racetrack with you these days, but you're still out there, you're still racing. You ran the Ford GT, ran it at Le Mans. I'm not going to get into that because that wrenched my heart. And
I'm happy to get into it. Whatever.
We got into it with Bill. If you want to get into it some, we can too. That's not a problem. But without further ado, that's Mr. Ben Keating over there.
There you go.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just let folks know who you are and what you have going on right now out in Texas. And I mean, you're global, man. You're all over the place.
Wow.
So tell the folks who you are and what you got going on.
Who I am. I'm a 49-year-old car dealer from Texas who is lucky enough to get to play with cars in my recreation of racing, as well as pay for it by playing with cars at work. I have 18 dealerships in the state of Texas representing 17 different brands. I'll say that I've been racing since 2007. That was as a result of a Christmas present from my wife.
You came to it that late in life, really?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought you'd always been racing. I had no idea.
No, 2007 was my very first race. It did not go very well. I was in my first 6 races. I was involved in 6 incidences. Not all of them were my fault, by the way. But they put me on probation. Basically said, if you have another incident in the next year, then we're kicking you out.
Wow.
That's exactly what I needed. So
you got a little smack on this.
I had to dial it back a little bit. I was trying too hard, but I am, one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily know about me is that I went through drug rehab twice in high school. And
no idea.
One thing that I enjoy making the comparison to is that my personality is no different now than it was then, but my drug of choice is legal, and it's a race car, and I'm very lucky to be able to afford my habit.
And you definitely jumped into the deep end of it. There's no doubt about that. I really thought you'd been racing longer than that, Ben. I had no idea that you had gone from just jumping in 2007 to competing at the highest levels of sports car racing all over the world, man. That's a quick progression.
In 2006, I was given what I would now call a DE weekend at Texas World Speedway in College Station. And I literally took a Viper off the showroom floor of a Dodge dealership. And I wore shorts. I did not bring a helmet. I did not bring tools. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had to borrow a helmet, which was a really nice, open-faced, old-school, goofy-looking helmet. And it took me about 2 hours before I boiled my brake fluid. I had an exciting excursion through the field off of turn 9 at Texas World. I came in and described what happened, and the guy next to me in the garage says, "Well, it sounds like you boiled your brake fluid." I'm a car dealer, and I'm supposed to know all this stuff about cars.
Like, how'd that happen?
I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about, dude." And so, he came over with his jack and his tool set, helped me bleed my brakes, and I was good to go. But I was completely hooked. In my second event, my second driver education weekend, I went around to all the Viper people and I asked them what I needed to do to make my car a better track car. I added it all up, and it was about 15 grand worth of stuff. And being the old used car guy, I realized that if I take this brand new Viper and I put all this stuff on it, then it's going to be a track car, and it's going to be worth about 15 grand less. So it's really about a $30,000 spend.
Or more. Or more. Yeah, you've exponentially killed that car at that point, definitely.
Well, there was a full-blown race car that had a couple $100,000 spent on it, there for sale for 50 grand, and I decided that was the best value. So at my second weekend of DE, my second DE event, I ended up buying a race car because I thought that was the best value. And at my third DE weekend, I ended up racing, even though I had no business in the race. But because I bought a race car out of that series, they assumed that I intended to be in the race.
Was it Nara? Were you in a Viper, or was it what?
No, this was the old school. Before Nara, it was Viper days.
Okay.
The Viper Racing League, and so I did the Viper Racing League as a result of Viper days in 2007 all the way through 2012.
Okay.
So for 5 years, I did Viper days, and then in 11 and 12, instead of, I bought a Comp Coupe Viper. I had it all prepped to move over to World Challenge, and Chrysler had come out with the ACRX. Mm-hmm. They'd come out with their own spec series racing a Viper. It was being hosted by Nara, and I decided that was more economical, and I was right. But I stayed in that series and raced in the Viper Cup for 3 years.
Okay, so you were Rob and Tom. Was it Tom Driscoll? Were they involved in that back then with Nara? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay.
Rob was for sure. No, it's Tom. Yes, Tom. I can't
Australian or he's
that's
from
right.
Australia.
That's right.
Yeah. I know Tom.
Yeah.
Tom and I have punted each other on kart tracks before. It's wonderful. It's a small world.
Nice.
It's a small world. So the first race car that you bought, was that the Comp Coupe that you're talking about, or?
Oh no, that was the
what was the first
2000 model GTS?
Okay.
2000 model Viper GTS that had been turned into a full-blown race car, full cage, full fuel cell, no interior, all the upgrades. They took a really nice, expensive street car, completely tore it down and built it up into a nice race car.
So basically what you did with that car is, coming from the instructor side of this, you did everything that we would have advised against. We would have basically said, find a nice street car, leave it on street tires, drive for a couple years. And you went, just give me the full load, man. I'm going. Well,
I was correct that it was the best value.
Probably.
I paid 50 grand. I raced it for 2 years and I sold it for 60 grand.
Oh, holy crap. How do I get that kind of luck? I don't get that kind of luck. That's awesome.
Well, first of all, I made a good deal on it when I bought it.
Yeah.
And second of all, after I sold it, it had just won the national championship in its class. So
that'll do it.
I gave it
a
little.
That'll bump the value. Yeah, that'll bump.
Yeah.
Provenance is always
history.
A good thing. Yeah, it's always, that'll always bump the value better than mods will. That's for sure.
And so
awesome.
I ended up, I ended up looking for what was going to be next. I had done very well in the club racing deal, and obviously, I mean, I barely made it through the Great Recession. Nobody wanted to give a loan to a car dealer, right? And at that point in time, and we barely made it through. But when 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 came along, they were the best years in the car business that I had ever seen. And so when we realized we were going to make it and we were doing well, I made the decision to make the jump from the Viper Cup over to the American Le Mans Series in 2013 in the GTC class, because at the time that was the Pro-Am class.
Yeah.
And the reason I went there specifically was because I was so connected to Viper. Through Tomball Dodge, through Viper Exchange, we were the #1 volume Viper dealer in the world for 8 or 9 years straight. And so I knew that Chrysler, Dodge, SRT as a factory program was racing an ALMS in the GTSR. And I made the decision to stay close to Viper. And the easiest way to do that, ironically, was to race a Porsche in GTC, so that I was on the track at the same time with the Vipers. And it paid off, because that is how I was able to convince Ralph Gilles and Bill Riley to build a GT3 version of the GTSR.
And I was actually working for SRT at that time, and I was one of the SRT track experience instructors, and one of the very fortunate 4 that got to go out on the SRT tour when we toured all over the country with the SRT vehicles, and met you during that time, actually. And
nice.
It was I think it was probably mid-Ohio. You happened to be up at the SRT hospitality area. We had it was a TI Automotive Viper that we had up there on display.
That was 2015.
Yeah, you came up there and hung out with us for a little while, and ever since then, I've just been following along with what you've done and watching how you've actually progressed as a driver. I didn't realize that the timeline was as compact as it actually is, because where you have come from, club racing in 06-07 or HPDE club race 06-07 to about 2012, and then jumping into where you jumped into, that's a massive progression. That's a huge jump, man. So how did you just find yourself in a position where you just had a natural aptitude for this, or are you constantly working?
Yes, some may call it a natural aptitude. Some may call it a drug addiction.
Well, but that'll do it, though. I mean, that'll definitely.
Having courage to go out there and try something behind the wheel of anything with a motor has never been my problem. And so I was able to explore the limits pretty quickly. I very quickly learned that it was much cheaper to stay within the limits.
Stay on the 9/10 side, not the 11/10.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, but I was pretty successful pretty quickly. It's funny when I think back about it now, but in 2010, in late 2009, my grandparents died. They left me a little bit of money. And instead of doing the wise thing that would be to save that money, I decided that my grandparents would really want me to do something that I always wanted to do.
Your grandparents wanted you to race at Le Mans.
No, at Daytona. At Daytona.
Okay, Daytona. That's
so,
fine.
so in
Either way,
I took all the money that my grandparents left me, and I went out to find a ride in the 24 Hours of Daytona, January 2011. Ended up with Buckler at TRG.
Okay.
And my co-driver there, one of my pros there was Dominic Farnbacher.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with Dominic, and we had a great relationship. I'm the one that got Dominic the job to be in the GTSR with Chrysler.
Cool.
But I fell in love with not just racing or sports car racing, but specifically I really fell in love with endurance sports car racing, because even though I had an engineer and a coach, and I'd done everything right from my perspective on the club racing side, or any type of what I'll call sprint racing, when you're the only one that's behind the wheel of a car, your perspective is, I just got all of it. I got everything there is to get.
Yeah.
And I had won a national championship in my class in 08, 09, and 2010, and 2011, and 2012. I had done extremely well. I thought I was hot shit. And then you get into the car with some of these other guys, and you realize how slow you really are. But it's far and away the best development tool.
Yeah.
To be able to say that I got in the exact same car at the exact same time on the exact same track, and I have all the data available to me to see what he was doing different than me. There is no better tool for learning.
Agreed.
And developing. And, I've been with Jerome Bleekemolen now for 7 years. That's one of the reasons why we've been together for so long, is we just work really well together. I know how to adapt my driving style differently than his driving style, but I learned so much from looking at his data.
Yeah.
I went back, Callie, I can't remember when, but I think at the end of like 16 or 17, I went back to a Viper Days event, and it was very impactful for me because I realized that either I've gotten a whole lot better in the last 3 years, or these guys have gotten a whole lot slower.
No, it's the latter. It's definitely
that's
not.
right.
Yeah, it's definitely the latter, and it's you're comfortable drinking from a fire hose, is what it sounds like. I mean,
that's right,
because you're passionate about it, and that's really probably what it boils down to, is you just absolutely love it, so you're living it, and that's a cool thing. That's a very cool thing. To see the evolution that you've had over the last seven or so years. No one can deny the progression that's been there, number one. Number two, I still don't understand. There are some people where you look out and you're labeled as gentleman drivers. Are you? I mean,
absolutely.
Yes,
I love that term.
Do you really? Because you're a pro, man. You're
no, I'm not. I am. I just got through describing to you how much quicker
Yeah,
those guys are than I am.
but you are living
And
it.
and I'm still able to go out and hire guys that are getting paid to drive who are a hell of a lot faster than I am.
Sure.
I have yet to have anybody pay me to come
Okay.
drive their race car.
Okay. Well, I'll take that. I'll take that.
And listen, I already said it. I'm a 49-year-old car dealer from Texas. I am never going to make my living driving a race car. I am in a sweet spot right now where my eyesight hasn't dropped off a cliff yet.
Right.
My hearing is there, but I don't need it yet. My reflexes are still okay. Mm-hmm. How long can I keep this up? Yeah, I don't know. I think I can keep it up for a really long time.
You saw what Paul Newman did. We want you in the car.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't expect to stay as competitive as I am now, but I do feel like I am in a little bit of a sweet spot right now. I don't look at it and go, man, imagine how good I would be if I'd started at 25 instead of 35
or 5, like the norm. I mean, that's the norm these days.
I look at it and say, man, I'm just grateful to be where I'm at right now.
That's the right attitude to have. And as far as the co-drivers that you've had in the car with you over the last several years, the cool thing about those guys, and I know it from being around them over the years. I mean, I've been involved in motorsports since I was 4 in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And endurance sports car racing, really, I'll race anything. I'm equal opportunity. I don't really care. I don't care what motor's in it, what wheels are driving it, how much it weighs, what tires. Just give me a car, and I'm fine. But I've been fortunate enough to be around the endurance paddocks long enough to know that a Bleekemolen or a Farnbacher, or name any one of those guys that is literally at the top level of their game, they're also looking for improvements. They're also always looking for what you're looking for, as far as from what I've seen of them anyways, they don't have the mindset that they've got it. They always have the mindset that there's incremental stuff to get there. And that has to be really cool to be around on a constant basis.
Especially on those that 1 or 2 times a year when I'm faster than he is.
Right.
That's awesome. That's the most fun of the year.
You just get to come back in and go, what happened? It's like, that's
well,
awesome.
I get to come back in and say, hey, do you want to go review some data, look at some video?
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So we've got you. I don't know how long I have you for. I would love to get, and I asked Bill this when he was on the show. I asked him what the differences were between the Viper and the Mercedes. And he said one of the biggest differences, honestly, was just a 4 or 5 year newer car. And he said the Mercedes was just a more reliable package overall. And the Viper was more of a sledgehammer. But I want your take on that.
Well, I got to be careful. You have to remember, Bill Riley built the GT3R Viper.
I know.
He designed it. He built it. He didn't have anything to do with the design or building of the AMG. And
True.
So, it's like asking him to compare, his child with another child. So what I'll say is it was really interesting for me to watch the progression of what happened to the Viper from its first year in 2014 to its last year in 2016 within IMSA. And the reason I say that is, 2014 was the very first year of the United Sports Car Championship, mm-hmm. the combination of Grand Am and ALMS. Mm-hmm. And for that class, they were still trying to figure out what it was going to be. It was not a GT3 class to begin with. The first year, kind of the baseline car that everybody was trying to measure up against was a GT3 Cup Porsche.
Okay.
And I think the Porsche negotiated that deal in as part of the GTC class that was coming from ALMS. So it was really unusual in 2014 for us to have a GT3 car competing in the GT Daytona class. At that time, we had more downforce than any other car, and it was, even though you think about this big displacement V10 and all this torque, in 2014, where the Viper had its huge strong suit was in the tight, twisty, downforce tracks. Mm-hmm. Then by the time we got to 2016, it became a GT3 class, where all the cars were GT3 spec cars. And most of those cars had either had an evolution or were newly updated by the time we got there over that 3 or 4 year period. And the biggest difference to me is that the manufacturers realized that the way you make a fast race car in BOP racing is to have a lot of downforce, because it doesn't do you any good to put a bunch of power in there. They're just going to pull the power out.
Right.
And having a car that has a ton of downforce makes it easier to drive, makes it easier to hide the lap time. It makes it easier to do everything. But when we were in the Viper in 2016, we had way less downforce than all the other cars, and all we had was top speed. And so we went from one side of the spectrum all the way to the other in a period of 3 years, and it was pretty interesting to watch.
That had to be a weird evolution. It's sort of backwards from what you expect it to be, right?
Like, that's right. But, I have a huge emotional connection to the Viper, to the brand. Not just personally, but business-wise.
Also. Rightly so.
And I hated to see the car go, but if the car was going to be competitive, it needed to have an evolution done to it where we would add a ton of downforce.
Okay.
And obviously Bill was willing to do that, but it was going to be extremely expensive. And we had a whole regime change at Chrysler, and they weren't interested in road racing.
And the Viper was going away anyway, and they probably knew it. Yeah, they knew that it was going back.
I wasn't willing to pay for it. So, and at that same time, the AMG, had a really successful year in Europe. I think they got 4 out of the top 5 at the Nürburgring, swept the podium at the Nürburgring in 2016, and they wanted to come to the U.S. It's a really interesting dynamic, but at that time, Multimatic was working with Bill on building the LMP2 car.
Okay.
And Multimatic does a bunch of business with AMG. And so AMG was looking to Multimatic for some direction on what do you think we should do to bring this car to the U.S. And everything just seemed to come together for us to race the AMG. And so that's what we did. And
did it well. I mean, you guys definitely represented well.
Well, to me, the AMG, of course, okay, I'm biased, but to me, the AMG is the best GT3 car out there. And that's for, I say that for 2 reasons. Number one, because, again, I've already said that I feel like downforce is the key to the best GT3 car. And clearly in 2016, I'm sorry, in 2017 and 2018, we had the most downforce, and IMSA really struggled to figure out what to do with us in terms of competitiveness, because we didn't have top speed. We didn't always have lap time, but we were still able to do pretty well in races. And our BOP was to me, so much crazy different than all the other cars. We were the heaviest car. Every other car, we had a higher minimum ride height than every other car in the class, and we were the heaviest car in the class, which to me says, that car is an outlier. As you look at the BOP chart, you go, that car is an outlier, which to me is the definition of it must be the most well-designed car in the field.
Right. They had to do all that to it to bring it to rein it in.
That's right. But to me, the way I would describe it is that I was most impressed. The modern GT3 cars now have a lot of electronic aids. I call them electronic nannies.
Let's stick on that for just a second.
Well, I'll come back to it.
Okay, ABS, man. I want to go to that.
So, I've got ABS and I've got
TC
traction control.
Yeah.
And the Viper was great. The Viper was bulletproof. We could have a problem with the Viper and fix it on pit road and not lose a lap. It was bulletproof, in my opinion, which is opposite of what Bill said. But the AMG, if you have something that breaks, you're not going to be on the podium. You're not. You can't. Bill designed the car, the Viper, to be able to fix in a couple minutes. You're not going to fix anything on the AMG in a couple minutes.
It's going to require a team of Germans in white coats to descend on it with laptops, or is it's not any quick connects.
Okay. But in the Viper, if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you half of a second. You make a mistake in a corner in the Viper, it's going to cost you half a second. In the AMG, because the ABS and the traction control are so much better refined and you have so much more downforce, when you make a mistake in the AMG, it costs you a tenth or two. And so I'm able to explore the limits a lot harder. I'm able to make a mistake and not give up lap time. I'm able, as a amateur, as a gentleman driver, to be much closer to Jerome Bleekemolen's time.
Right.
It makes me, as the AM, look better.
Do you enjoy driving the GT3 cars with the 14 levels of traction control and the ABS more or less? Because this is the thing. Like, I totally understand that they do level the playing field when it comes to the gentleman driver to the pro. But when everybody's breaking at the 150.
My opinion on that whole subject has changed in the last 24 months.
Okay, cool.
I would have told you, yes, I love it because it levels the playing field, because I have much lower chance of having a wreck. It costs me less money
from
in
saving equipment.
parts.
I totally get that. From cost
and it levels the playing field, and I like that. Now I'm doing a full season in the WEC, in the World Endurance Championship, where we're all driving GTE cars. We're all driving, all the GT AM class is made up of last year's pro cars, and we have no ABS.
Right.
And as I have gotten comfortable in that car, I've realized that not having ABS is one of the easiest ways for me to make up the difference compared to my competitors. My other gentleman driver competitors, to me, we're all going to hit the throttle at the same force. Mm-hmm. Going in a straight line, everybody's the same. You're going to show your difference in skill in cornering and in braking. Yeah. And I have gotten really good at braking.
If you're great at modulation and threshold, man, you've got a massive edge.
And now, now I look back on it and I go, man, I'm so glad we don't have ABS, because now with ABS, all those gentleman drivers can just dive bomb. Yeah. You can't pass going. You can't pass going into the brake zone because everybody's doing the same shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with that. Like, everybody's braking at the 100 board. Everybody's tipping in early and letting it ride on the TC through the apex and off. And hearing those cars like the whole way around the corner, you just hear them ratcheting on the TC. I've driven some – I haven't driven a proper GT3 car, but I've driven some supercars, hypercars that have some very aggressive TC systems that you can lean on like that. And it just – like you just said, it's in the way. It's in the way of allowing you to bring your talent to the surface. And
so now I would say I don't like it.
Gotcha.
I got a lot of good publicity, I would say, in Daytona this year in the LMP2 car. I started the race in the LMP2 car. I started the race with a triple stint, and I developed a huge lead in my first stint of the race. I 100%, that was due to being very comfortable threshold braking without ABS.
Yeah.
And that has come from a year in the WEC.
That's cool.
It's
cool that it crosses over like that too.
Yeah, you bet.
LMP.
You bet.
Yeah, I mean, car control is car control, and what you're doing with your hands, your feet, your eyes, and all that stuff. I mean, it's applicable. It's applicable across platforms in different ways, but it's still applicable, right?
Well, yeah. Before, it takes a while to develop. Before, when you're going in and you have a lockup, well, what's your natural reaction? Your natural reaction is to hit the brake harder. Oh shit, I'm going to run off the track.
Right.
And so it takes a while to develop a feel for, okay, either I just locked up or I'm just getting ready to lock up. How can I get out of this situation and still make it through the corner?
Right.
And it's definitely taken a while to develop that skill, but now that I have it, it's nice to have.
It's an attention getter. I know that. Having been there many, many times, it's when you drive in like that and you're like, I might have been 10 meters too deep. Oh crap. 10 meters too deep at 10/10 is a lot of space, man. I totally get that. Let's stick with racing for just a few more minutes, if you don't mind. And I'd like to get your take on how we're going to get back to motorsport as we start to bring people out of their houses. And do you think the rest of this season is a non-spectator deal at the professional level, or what do you think?
I have to give a disclaimer.
Sure.
This is my opinion.
Absolutely.
And
am I putting you on the spot too much? If I am,
no, it's fine.
Okay.
I have no problem giving my opinion.
Okay.
But I have been doing it enough at home and at the office that I realize that it's gonna be very unpopular with a lot of other people. there are a lot of doomsday preppers out there who have been waiting for this moment their entire lives, and they're finally being able to say they're right. And so what I will say is that I am of the opinion that that we should get back to racing, and I am of the opinion that we will get back to racing. People get amnesia pretty quickly, and when you think about the fact that this whole thing started 6 weeks ago. This whole thing started 6 weeks ago, and we've already gone from up the climb of the hill. We're back down the other side of the curve, and I believe that we are going to slowly flatten out into it being a non-issue.
I certainly hope that we do.
And I believe, to me, clearly the peak of this deal is past us. And to me, if that is true, then it's happened within the last 6 weeks. And I believe that everything will be pretty back to normal by the end of May. And again, I'm not a medical professional. This is my opinion. I don't want to get into any argument.
No, and I didn't ask that question for that to happen, but I totally understand what you're saying.
It is, I'll say that, to talk about business for a minute, I'm very grateful to be able to say that the government has deemed car dealerships as being essential. So, we have been open every day at all 18 dealerships for the last 6 weeks. We haven't closed at all because of this pandemic event. I've got 1,500 employees, and we are dealing with the public every day. And I'm not aware of a single case in my organization.
That's good. And evidently you guys you're doing it right.
Well, that's the deal. My deal is, as long as you do it right, you should do it. There's no reason to avoid doing all this stuff out of a fear, when the only reason you should have fear is if you don't do it right. It'd be the same as, hopping into a race car and going racing without harnesses, without seatbelts, without a fire suit, without a helmet.
You're not saying that this whole COVID thing isn't real. You're just saying that take the precautions that you need to take with your employees, yourself, the general public that comes in, and we need to keep digging.
If you take the precautions, you got nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
Clearly it exists. It is real.
Yeah,
it does exist. It is a virus. I'm of the camp that believes, if you are in a high risk category, then you need to not come to the racetrack.
Right. Then Petit Le Mans might not be the event that you want to attend. Watch it on TV.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I get to see you at Petit Le Mans later this year. I really do.
Me too.
Let's get back to something a little happier, and we'll close it out on this last train of thought. What is it that's in Ben Keating's personal garage right now that you really, really, really love? Like, do you have one baby in the garage that you love above all, or is it really tough considering you've got the Viper Exchange and you have access to?
So, I have some cars that are, collectibles that are really cool. I've got I've got the Viper that was owned by Bob Lutz when he was president of Chrysler.
Oh,
I've got
do you really?
The Viper that was owned by
That's too
Ralph
cool.
Geel when he was president of Dodge.
The white one?
No, before that.
Before,
ATR
okay.
one,
Okay.
the Voodoo car.
Okay, yeah.
I've got Ralph's Michigan license plate that says Voodoo, and I've got Bob's Michigan license plate that says GTSR.
Hell yes.
And I love those cars. I have a 2017 car that I built specifically for myself to keep. I've got the GT3R race Viper that won Daytona in 2015. I've got the GTSR Viper that I raced at Le Mans in 2015. I've got the GT3 Wins AMG race car in the garage, and I have the Wins Ford GT race car that I raced at Le Mans.
That retro Wins livery, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just, oh my God. The first time y'all rolled that out, I was just like, yay. That's gorgeous car.
Kind of the two cars that, what I think the coolest car in my garage is the Force One. So Henrik Fisker and I worked on a project to build an American supercar, and we started with the Viper as a base, and Henrik did all the design stuff of the exterior and interior. We did all the performance work, and we didn't build very many of them, but it's the coolest car to drive, to look at, to be around, to sit in. But my favorite car to drive specifically as a driver's car is I have an 06 Ford GT Heritage.
Okay.
And that's the car that
Really?
I'm
shocked by that.
When I drive that car, I go, man, this just makes driving fun.
Okay.
I thought I could show you a picture of it, but I can't see it from outside. I'm driving it today.
You're literally daily driving a Heritage Edition Ford GT.
Yes.
I love you for that, man.
Which is an interesting story, because I had a Ford GT on MSO, brand new, and I felt guilty every time I drove it because they were bringing so much money, and so I sold it, and I bought a Heritage with 10,000 miles on it already, so that I could drive it and I wouldn't feel guilty about putting more miles on it.
What blows my mind about the original GT is the appreciation that they've gone through over the last couple of years. Those cars are actually bringing really good money these days.
Well, and they have for a long time, and it's exactly that reason. I mean, I can't describe it other than to say it is amazing to drive. It sounds great. It performs great, but it's one of those cars that when you get behind the wheel and you drive it, you feel like a driver. You feel like, man, this is really something special.
And you have to row the gears and all that good stuff. And it's you're connected to it. It does harken back to the 60s. And it harkens back to the originals in a way that I'm not sure the last iteration of the Ford GT really does. The last iteration of the Ford GT, to me anyway, it's very 2020. It's very, current gen hypercar.
I'll say I have a 2020 Heritage being built right now. The biggest negative of this COVID-19 deal is that they had to stop building my car. But I have one of those coming, and it is very different. It is very 2020. Performance-wise, the new car is it's a way better performer.
Oh yeah,
the aerodynamics are unbelievable. The weight is unbelievable. The power to weight ratio, everything is performance-wise. The car is just incredible. it doesn't feel as much like a real driving experience as it does when you're shifting the gears.
Yeah, the 06 is analog. The new car is digital, basically.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. The new car is stunning. I want to get your take on this, and then we'll wrap it up after I get your take on this, because you have a 2020 coming. Do you feel this is going to be a tough question to ask a Ford dealer too, and someone who raced with Ford? Do you feel they put the right motor in the new car, in the new Ford GT? Do you think that the EcoBoost is, because I think you know where I'm going with this, because I'm like, if they'd have put that Voodoo motor in there, oh my God.
Okay,
help me feel better about the EcoBoost choice.
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you, everybody's opinion about something is based on a comparison.
Yes.
I have no idea what the Voodoo motor is.
Oh, the GT350 motor.
Okay.
The flat plane crank 5.2.
Yes, I'll tell you, I think they put the right motor in the car. Now, I do not have an emotional connection to that motor. I do not have an emotional connection to the EcoBoost. When I hit the throttle on my 06 Ford GT, and you hear the whine of the supercharger, you hear the exhaust scream,
and 5.4 liters going.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is very emotional. I don't get that on the EcoBoost. But the question, so is there an emotional connection? No. Did they put the right motor in? Absolutely.
Balance alone?
Well, two things. Number one, if you look at the design of that tail section, if you're going to let all the air go through those flying buttresses on the back, you don't have much room back there. And you're not going to put a big V8 back there and have all that room. I think that the size of the engine allows them to do a lot more with the design of the aero, the design of the body.
That makes sense.
I think it allows them to put the weight lower. That car has the lowest center of gravity of any car I've ever raced. It feels and is designed more like a prototype than any GT car out there.
Yeah, when it first hit the field in the States, at Daytona, the first time they ran it at Daytona, all of us were basically saying, that's a DP.
And in my opinion, one of the reasons for that is the EcoBoost V6 is just a small package. They can put it lower. It gives them more room to do stuff. And then also you get the power to weight ratio. The engine is a big factor when it comes to weight. And the fact is, they've got a ton of miles, whether you're talking about, Ganassi racing that engine in a DP, having it turned up to 800 horsepower or whatever they had it turned up to, or you're talking about an F-150. They've got millions upon millions of miles on that motor. And they can do whatever they need to do from a performance perspective. They can get all the power they can possibly use out of that motor. And it's a small package. It's a lightweight package. It's extremely reliable package. Because of all those reasons, yes, I think they did the right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay. It's totally fair. It's an opinion. It's just an opinion, and I wanted to get your take on it.
The purpose of building the car is performance.
It's to win. It's to win races. Yeah. It's to win races. Yeah.
In 06, it was emotional.
Yeah.
It was to pull on the heartstrings of the GT40s of the mid 60s.
And it did it.
It did it.
It worked. It totally worked.
Both cars achieved their purpose.
I may have gotten caught up in the 06 launch, and when I saw the brand new car, it didn't tug the heartstrings like the 06 cars did. It didn't tug the heartstrings as much. Now, if I look at a new GT parked beside a Zonda or a Jira or something along those lines, it fits. I think it fits with those cars.
Yeah.
It sits with those cars, and it looks like it belongs there. Whereas the 06 car doesn't really kind of go in that genre. I totally get it, man. I just wanted your opinion on it. Ben Keating, thank you so much for your time. If there's anything left to say on that subject, I'm going to let you say it. And if there's anyone that is particularly helpful to you as far as what you do with either the dealerships or your racing programs that you would like to say thank you to, take the time to do it, because I really appreciate your time coming on with us at No Driving Gloves.
Before we started the show, you mentioned that I could talk about anything up to and including a bicycle collection.
Sure.
The fact is, I have quite a few bicycles.
Do you really? Okay. I didn't know that. I just threw it out there.
You hit the nail on the head by accident. I do have a decent bicycle collection, and I have been dealing with this lockdown, shelter in place with a little retail therapy. And over the last 6 weeks, I've bought 3 new bicycles.
Road, mountain, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So that's my favorite way to stay fit. And I just thought it was ironic that you used that as an example. But
that's awesome.
I have to say that as far as a partner in business and in racing, I have to give a shout out to Wins. That relationship started a couple years ago, pretty much by accident. IMSA asked the competitors to come up with a retro livery for their 50th anniversary deal.
Okay.
We literally got on the internet and typed in IMSA GTP liveries, because there is no retro AMG livery.
Right.
And we pulled up the Hotchkiss Porsche Wins livery, and I said, "Hey, I do business with those guys. I'll call them." And
oh my God,
out of the blue, I called them. I do a bunch of business with them at my dealerships. The conversation went really, really well, and obviously we've gone from there. And it's so much fun. I mean, those people are car people. They're like me in that they work with cars, and their recreation is cars. And there are a lot of B2B, business to business deals that work, and there are a lot of them that don't work. And this is one where it has just been awesome for us to get to know each other. There have been a lot of things that have come out of the relationship. Whether it's helping at the dealership, or racing in IMSA, or racing in the World Endurance. We have become bigger fans of each other, and it's been a great partnership.
That's very cool. Yeah, I don't know whether anybody, I guess somebody knows that. Some people know that that's how that came together, but that is just, that's cool to hear, man. Like, you designed, or you went out to find a retro livery, didn't even have a sponsor, looked at that and went, "Oh, there's a little bit of a relationship there. Let's see if we can make it deeper." And now, a couple of years later, you're racing all over the world together, and you're bringing some really good looking cars to the racetrack.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to design them. It's been fun to do it. They have enjoyed doing it also. They've enjoyed being part of it.
That's cool.
You know,
That's very
the
cool.
50th anniversary for IMSA coincided with the 80th anniversary for WINS the same year. And so, you know, they already had a budget set aside to celebrate the 80th year. And luckily, we got to do a lot of that at the racetrack.
That's amazing. That's amazing how things like that come together. And I mean, you went looking for it, but you didn't really know where it was going to come from. And then it turns into a much deeper, longer lasting relationship as a result. Very cool. Very cool. Ben Keating, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on No Driving Gloves today. We really, really do appreciate the time. We know you're a very busy man. 18 dealerships in Texas, the Viper Exchange, still rolling. I checked out Viper Exchange before we got on this. I want an ACR Extreme so bad. I got to drive those cars when I was with SRT.
Sean, that's so interesting. I want to sell an ACR
Do
Extreme
you really?
so bad.
I tell you what, you helped me move about 30 simulators, and I will buy an ACR Extreme from you. Hang out for just a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Right.
I'm going to sign off. This has been Sean Yoder with Ben Keating on No Driving Gloves. You can find us all over social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We will release this podcast in the coming weeks. It's going to be probably a week and a half, 2 weeks before we release this show. You'll be able to find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever fine podcasts are downloaded and listened to. Again, Ben Keating has been our guest today. Thank you so much for your time, Ben. I'm going to return you to your day already in progress. This is Yoda saying bye. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a great rest of the week and weekend and all that good stuff, and get back out there and play with your cars. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.